Hello, podcast world, fellow horticulturists, lovers of plants, gardeners, family, and friends. Welcome to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast, friends with woodies for garden goodies. I'm host Matt Guthrie.
And I'm host Tim Fleischer. Coming at you from Central Ohio, Zone 6B. We're just a couple of public horticulturists and certified arborists with experience in education, landscape design, gardening, retail, and wholesale.
So grab a drink, polish your pruners, dust off that kneeling pad, and let's get down to business. Hey, Shrubby Buddies, and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. I'm host Matt Guthrie, joined with my best good buddy, Timmy Tugslot Fleischer. Timmy, how are you?
I'm good. How's it going, Matthew C. Guthrie the first?
It's going well, Tim. It's going well.
Good.
So, yeah. So, what's new in your world? Anything?
Go
ahead.
I went to my daughter's school today in the third grade, put on a little aquarium. They all had projects that they did about a different ocean animal, and they all had it set up and talked to us about their animal, and it was really fun. It was nice.
What animal did Amelia have?
Seal.
She had a seal. Mm-hmm. Okay, very good.
And she's like an anti-procrastinator, so this was assigned like a month ago, and she had it done like 29 days ago.
So she's nothing like you.
No, she's not like me or mom.
Yeah. Oh, is Megan a procrastinator?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Big time. Yeah.
You know what I hate about this chair is that it creaks a lot. Do you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I like it. It gives the room a little character.
Yeah. So it's unusual because we're recording this on a Friday, which is a first for us, and it doesn't come out until next Tuesday. So I feel a little bit off. Not going to lie. I don't know how you feel.
It's a little different.
Yeah, but regardless, we're gonna make best of it. So
yeah, you're taking another trip up to the motherland to
going to work on the cabin,
do some work on the cabin, put in an oven floor, and
all of the good stuff.
Frame up a new room,
do all kinds of good stuff out there.
That's exciting.
So Amelia had her thing, and then this afternoon, I took off work early and went and picked up some plants for a landscape job I am starting on this weekend, and met you at the record shop, did a little record surfing, a little record flipping, looking for something new to spin.
Yes, we did.
Spoonful Records in Columbus, Ohio. Stopped down to see our buddy Elijah, and then we grabbed food at Wario's. And I am miserably full. After doing that,
yeah, I'm going to be full till after breakfast tomorrow.
It's kind of like a late lunch, early dinner type thing. The food, the sandwich was fantastic, but damn, it filled me up.
Yeah, it did.
So, yeah, so it was a little nice afternoon, and here we are.
Full hearts, full bellies.
Yeah, isn't that a saying off of Friday Night Lights? Something like that? Full hearts, full mind, something. I don't know.
Yep.
Anyways. So this week's episode, we are going to talk a little bit about fall garden cleanup, putting your fall garden to bed for the year, just some things to be thinking about as that time draws closer for a lot of you. Maybe now is the time you're going to go out and do some of this stuff. Maybe some of you are procrastinators, unlike Tim's daughter, and are going to put this off until a last-minute type thing. So we're just going to run through some different things that you can do in the garden now. None of this is a have to do. A lot of this stuff can be left and messed with in the spring if that's what you desire. But we know some people like to get out and do some of this stuff in the fall time. So
yeah, and we'd use the term cleanup lightly because it's not a whole lot of cleanup necessarily. It's just a lot of little things you can do in your garden, ways you can intervene to get things looking nice and ready for the winter. If you're the kind of person who just takes a pair of shears to your garden this time of year and just cuts everything back at ground level and blows all the leaves out, then this probably isn't going to be very helpful to you unless you'd like to maybe make some changes in your fall garden habits.
Yeah, absolutely. So this would be I don't.
Because I've already seen some areas around town where contractors have come in and just completely cut back all the ornamental grasses to the ground, and I'm just like, why?
Yeah,
There's so much that they have so much more to give this fall and all winter,
yeah,
and now they're gone.
yeah. Fall, ornamental grasses and some of the perennials. And I think what we want to accomplish with this talk is, like you said, maybe make changes. You can plan on some changes to your fall garden routine, or maybe these are things that you already practice, and we're not telling you anything that you don't already know. Or maybe it's you are already doing some things like leaving perennials up through the winter time to add some garden interest, but maybe there's some things that we're going to mention that you don't practice now that you can add into that routine. So we by no means support cutting everything back to the ground, blowing out every single leaf, making sure everything is like spick and span perfect in the fall. We are total advocates on leaving things up for wildlife, the birds for bird food, insects for like nesting spots for insects, all of that good stuff, as well as the winter interest. So
I think we should start with something a little bit controversial,
okay,
and that's what to do with leaves. And I know you've got some ideas, and I've got some ideas, and I'll start with what we do at our house. And we have some large trees like you. Our neighbor has just a gigantic red oak, and it's just to the west of us. So the leaves, many of them, end up in our yard. We have a very big Freeman maple, lots of white pines shedding right now. So we end up with tons of leaves in our yard. And I think that's where the controversy comes in, because there's this whole leave the leaves movement, right?
yeah,
And people are implying that you just leave them right there in your grass. Well, we don't like to do that. We don't like to leave them in the grass because we still like to utilize our yard, and we like to, what little grass we have, we like to have it come back and looking really nice next year. We're not trying to kill off parts of it. But what we also don't do is put the leaves at the curb.
yeah,
So there's like a happy medium for us there. And what we tend to do is we have a really nice backpack blower, and we'll kind of divide the yard in two and blow the ones towards the back into the back, almost wooded area. And then we'll blow the rest back towards the house into the flower beds.
okay,
So they just get, and we'll do that several times. And if there's a light coating of leaves, we'll mow them, adding organic material to the grass. But sometimes there's so many of these oak leaves, like
yeah,
you can't mow them over. There's nothing you're going to do to chop them up and, get down into that grass. So we blow them into our beds, which what that does is you leave leaves in there all winter in your beds. It provides tons of great insulation for your plant roots. Also, all these people always talk about leave the leaves because there's a lot of bugs that overwinter. Well, that's fine. They're just going to overwinter in my flower beds, not out in my turf grass. So the leaves that do break down in my garden are then adding organic matter to my garden. So
correct.
The oaks typically don't, and we'll either scoop out the big, the big thick parts of them and put them back in the corner come spring, or we'll mulch right over them. And then sometimes the maple leaves, which are falling now, those break down really quick. So
Yeah,
by spring, there's no evidence that they even existed.
yeah,
So
yeah. Very good.
that's what we do.
Yeah. So what I do, what I've traditionally done in the past, because people are probably going to hate me for this, but I for a long time I blew all of my leaves to the curb and just let the city come through and suck up the leaves and take them where they wanted to go. For the longest time, I just always thought, that was the easiest thing to do. Just get rid of the leaves. It's not a mess. It looks nice. Yada yada. Now I mulch everything into my grass. So
It's just, by the way, you can send your hate mail to Matt Guthrie 69 eggplant emoji at gmail.com.
I'm glad you remembered that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my super secret email.
Yep. Not anymore.
So yeah, I used to do that. Now I mulch everything to my grass just to add the organic compound like the organic material back into my grass. My grass, I have a lot of these big trees too, so the grass is thin. All of the topsoil was stripped when the house was built, so it's just, crappy soil, horrible soil. And I'm just trying to do what I can to get the grass that I do have to look as best as it can. And I figure the best place to start is soil. So I blow all of my leaves, like around my fence and stuff, out into the yard, mulch everything up. Leaves do get left in the garden. Some of them do get blown out of the garden and into the grass and mulched. But one thing that you can do would be to bag them. Mm-hmm. So like put the bagging attachment on, bag them, and that's going to chop them up some into like a finer kind of leafy, composty type thing, and then use that to mulch around your perennials in the fall. So that's, if you want to get rid of the leaves in your yard rather than blowing them out to the curb, maybe consider doing that. Either putting them in a compost pile in your backyard for future use, or mulching them and bagging them right up with the mower and then using them in your garden that way. So the leaves they're already kind of chopped up and a little bit easier to decompose.
That's probably the less lazy way of how Megan and I do ours, just because it's probably better to put the leaves that are chopped up back into the beds, but we blow them just because the oak next to us, and if you're bagging all that, I mean, you literally do like a half a pass across the yard, and then you've got a bag and dump. And so rather than bag and dump 35 times through my backyard, I'd just blow the leaves right into the garden.
No, for sure. Yeah, I get that.
But if you do have a smaller yard with less leaves, bagging and dumping is pretty ideal.
Yeah, and I mulch because, I have a ton of big trees in my backyard, hickories and a lot of really big oaks also. And it is that like I end up having to, sometimes I have to mow over those leaves like 3 times. Now I recently purchased one of those nice Toro super recyclers, and then I bought like an aftermarket like Gator blade that's all like wicked looking with these serrated edges, and it's a mulching blade, and it does a fantastic job compared to my old mower of mulching this stuff up. Even in those great big piles, the mower doesn't back down or bog down, and 2 or 3 passes over it, and it mulches it into the grass really, really fine. But
Megan, when Megan, my wife, listens to this, she's going to be sold on the Gator blade, and she's going to want one of those for our mower. So you better get ready to answer those questions for her.
Megan, hit me up. My number, girl. Yeah. So those are some things you can do with this leaf movement. Or just leave them in your yard if that's your thing, if that's what you want to do. That's not what Tim and I do. And if you don't do that, that's fine. I hope that people don't judge us because we don't leave leaves in our yard all winter long. But
yeah, I mean, we leave them in the beds. But even if you do want to blow them to the curb and have the city suck them up, then so be it. That's what you've chosen.
Yep, absolutely.
And we're totally fine with that.
Yeah. Cool. So that kind of hits on some of the leaf stuff. Even mulching sometimes in the wintertime is not a bad idea. If you have zero mulch on your garden, maybe it's a fresh garden too, just getting a layer of mulch on there, like a fine ground type hardwood mulch that's going to break down into the soil good relatively quick and not just sit there and just continue to build up. Fall might not be a bad idea. It's also going to help hold some of that moisture in through the winter, as well as kind of hold some of the heat into the soil through the wintertime. So maybe if you haven't mulched, maybe you haven't mulched in a couple of years, or maybe it's a fresh bed that you just put in. Mulching now going into the winter would be an excellent time for that. So.
Yeah. When it comes to wintertime gardens, one of the keys is having good insulation for your plant roots, especially if you've got things that are kind of borderline hardy. And that's why a lot of people don't realize this, but when you live up here further north and there's snow, oftentimes a snowier winter can be better for your plants, because when you have snowfall and snow stay, it provides a layer of insulation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But what's terrible is when we have these bitter cold winters, but with no snow. That's when you can really start freezing out roots. So the best thing is to have a nice layer of snow come down, and then that snow stays around for a while.
Yeah.
So, just a little side nugget related to the mulching and creating a layer of insulation.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Good point. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the little nugget there, little knowledge
I
nugget.
got all the nuggets.
You got nuggets, all right. Okay, so now we've taken care of the leaves and maybe the mulching and helping your plants out in that sense on adding organic matter back into the soil, which is going to benefit, adding the mulch, which is going to benefit. So now we're going to take a look at the perennials and maybe some of the shrubs and things that you have in your flower garden and what you may or may not want to do with these, coming into the wintertime with the fall. So one thing I would say is if you are able to and you appreciate the look of leaving perennials up all winter long, I 100% support that. That's what I do. I think that's what Tim and his wife do. And cut them back in the spring, but that's not for everybody. So, now would be a good time to cut things back that maybe don't look all of that great to you, maybe aren't going to provide a whole lot of winter interest to you. Hostas, for example, is one that just kind of melt into the ground. Sun King Aurelia does not look very good.
Those are two big ones. Even like Jack Frost Berneras don't look all that great.
Yeah, Jack Frost gets like just dead brown looking.
Yeah, think about hostas, they kind of turn yellow and they droop to the ground and they just kind of turn like wet and start getting mushy
and slimy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get those types of things we get out of there. Now, things that stand up more erect in the garden that maybe have a little cute seed head on the top, we typically leave anything like that we can.
Echinacea, Rudbeckia, any of the ornamental grasses. Echinops, yeah. So
Rattlesnake Master,
Allium, Calumet, all of that stuff you can leave up.
I love the big, we leave the big Rudbeckia Maxima, and that provides like 6-7 feet of height through the winter, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a frost and snow collector too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're not in favor of that stuff though, now would be the time to kind of get in there and cut these things back maybe to some good looking basil foliage, or if they're already died all the way back to the ground, just cutting them back to the ground, and just getting that dead organic material out of there. Anything that's maybe diseased, maybe there's something you were planning on leaving, but it does look kind of sickly and diseased, maybe going ahead and cutting that back and getting that foliage out of there wouldn't be a bad thing, so that the disease is out of there come the springtime. But yeah, and then I know when you and I were discussing this, you had some ideas on, cutting back some of the shrubs and things. I don't know if you wanted to hit on some of that.
Yeah. So when it comes to cutting back the shrubs, so I'll say subshrubs, for example. We've talked about subshrubs, which are things like Caryopteris and Calicarpa. They're woody shrubs, but we tend to treat them like perennials because the crown regeneration isn't really reliable. Like, it's like the roots are plenty hardy, but the crowns don't always come back as vigorous. I like to wait to cut those back. So if we have a pretty mild winter, something like a Caryopteris or Calicarpa, a beautyberry, and what's a common name on Caryopteris? Bluebeard.
Yeah.
If you want to create bigger plants, they may make it through the winter and break bud on the stems.
I have had them do that. Yeah.
And if you want to have a bigger plant, what you can do is wait till they break bud in the spring and then just cut the dead off above that. And then you're starting with the plant that's bigger. So I always wait on those subshrub type things. Another thing with shrubs, so for instance, something marginally hardy like a crepe myrtle, that's something that we're starting to get into here in Ohio. When Matt and I traveled to North Carolina this summer,
crepe
myrtles, we pointed out every single one, which was a lot. But you start to see them, and when you get to very southern Ohio, you start to see them more and more as trees. And then once you cross the border, they're everywhere. Mm-hmm. And even up here in Columbus, the garden centers are starting to carry them like crazy.
Yeah.
And we have one in our yard, and we have it planted like a shrub because all the top's going to die back. But what we do is we still leave the crown because it provides a little bit of insulation for those roots. Mm-hmm. Because if we did have a really rough winter, that's going to be the first thing that goes.
Absolutely.
And so leaving those stems above ground gives us a little bit of peace of mind on some extra insulation.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and there was another thing about shrubs, right?
Yeah, we just wanted to hit on, if you're pruning back your shrubs this winter, now could be the time that you would be thinking about hydrangeas. That's probably the number one shrub that gets questioned, at least the number one shrub that I get questioned on is, when do I prune back my hydrangeas and how do I do that? So if you're wanting to prune them back in the fall, make sure that you're pruning the right ones back in the fall. So your big leaf hydrangea and oak leaf hydrangeas are going to bloom on the old wood. So do not prune those now. If you prune them now, you're cutting back all of next year's flower buds.
Basically all those flower buds have already been set. You might not see them, but they're there.
Yeah.
And you're really going to do harm to your flower display. You're not going to harm the plant, but that might be a reason why you're not seeing a lot of flowers.
Yeah.
Come the next spring and summer.
Same with the lilacs.
Lilac's like the classic one. I mean, that's like the classic old school plant that has stood the test of time, and like it seems like everyone has one, and it reminds them of their grandmother, and they smell so nice. And you get a lot of, why my lilac's not blooming? Well, did you prune it? Yes. When did you prune it? Well, I whacked it back in the winter.
And that's why.
Or in the fall. And that's why you cut off all the flower buds. So they'll still find a way to throw out some flowers, but it won't be the display you're used to. So if you do like the idea of doing some trimming of your shrubs, you have to take into consideration, if it's a shrub that's showy due to blooms, you want to make sure that you're not cutting back the ones that bloom on the old wood.
Yeah, and a lot of your shrubs are not going to bloom on old wood. So I'm thinking, like, if you've got viburnums around your house, and God forbid I say burning bush, or and I say that kind of serious and also jokingly, but we know that there's a ton of people with these burning bush at their houses. That stuff, it's fine. Evergreens, I mean, you could prune those now. You could kind of shape them up going into the winter time.
You could prune other hydrangeas like the smooth hydrangea and the
panicled hydrangea.
Those are good to go.
So any of those could get pruned this time of the year going into the winter time. Get those things cleaned up. Personally, I like to leave them. The flowers that are on there added interest to the garden. So yeah, just like Tim was saying, make sure that you do a little bit of research before you prune on your shrubs to make sure that you're not, in fact, pruning off flower buds that have already been set for the following year's show. If you do want to look up that information, you could ask us, you could send us a message, or find yourself a reputable website, because it's so easy to get online right now and start Googling and just finding rubbish for plant related, for anything really, but I'm talking specifically plant related websites, like hydrangeaknowhow.com. Like, don't follow that. Like, go to like a .edu. Like I tend to look for things like NC State or Michigan State or Ohio State. That tends to be Missouri
my go-to.
Botanical. Yeah, any of the universities.
.orgs, .edus, .govs. If you're looking for things like, so just Google, does, calycanthus bloom on old wood or new wood, and then find yourself a reputable answer there.
Yeah, so. Good point. Yep. All right, cool. So kind of hitting back on the perennials here. So, you've decided you want to cut your perennials back this fall, or maybe you've decided you want to cut some of them back and leave some of them. Fingers crossed you want to leave most of them up, but maybe there's some that you are cutting back that are self-seeders. I'm thinking of like the Rudbeckias and some of the Echinaceas and things like that. Consider collecting some of those seed heads and some of that seed, and collect the seed prior to cutting it back. Put it in like a Ziploc baggie or preferably like a brown paper sack, and just throwing it in the back of your refrigerator for the winter time. Someplace where it's not going to get freezing cold, but it's going to be
in your garage.
Yeah, or in your garage where it's going to be dark, cool, and in a less humid environment. And then you could bring those seeds out in the springtime and sow them, directly into the ground. Mm-hmm. And you'll get some of those perennials, that are going to, that are going to come back for you. So that would be something you could do, while you're out cutting these perennials back, is just collecting some of those seeds. Milkweed's another good example, or maybe you plan on leaving your milkweed standing, but the pods are opening up now, and that the milkweed seeds are kind of, flying around in the air everywhere. Go out and collect those pods and keep the seed and sow it, or give it to your friends.
Exactly.
And pass that on. So that's another thing you could think about while you're out in the garden this time of year.
And while you're talking about seeds, I just want to interject something I just thought of is, if you find there's something that's becoming a little aggressive in your garden via self-seeding, you may want to just consider cutting it back regardless of how it looks. Like, I'll tell you where I'm at with our home garden is we leave the Echinops, which is globe thistle, up all winter, but I'm at the point where it's like, where does the prettiness of it in the winter, where is that line I want to draw with it? It's self-seeding everywhere.
Yeah.
And so Megan and I are going to have that conversation, because that's going to have to be a decision we make together. But
Yeah.
I am sick of it coming up everywhere. I like the plant. I like the few plants, but that's one where I'm ready to just take that all the way back to the ground.
What if your Spidgies started doing that? What if
They have.
Well, I'm talking like
They have.
to that extreme though.
Not to that extreme, but also,
What would you do? What would you do though if like all of a sudden you found that your Spigelia was just like,
I'd dig them up and give them to
super
people.
aggressive,
Actually, I already have given my mom a bunch.
would there be like a little part of you that's like, oh man, like
No, I'll tell you why. I know what you're saying, but let me tell you why. An Echinops seedling is just this big ugly thing.
yeah,
Like, it has these big coarse leaves, and it's really it doesn't pull up easy. It has a really deep root, whereas those Spidgy seedlings are just so delicate. So they're just so much easier to cull out if you
Okay.
need to.
okay, yeah, fair enough.
So
fair enough,
Echinops is just one of those. It is a real thug
Yeah.
in
Oh,
my
it's a
garden
tough,
right
yeah.
now, and I love it for a lot of the year, but I hate dealing with all the seedlings. I
Yeah.
just do. So
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So you've gone out, you've taken care of your leaves, you've cut back perennials, you've left perennials, you've collected some seed off of the perennials. You're getting all of this stuff done, and you're kind of looking around your garden, and and maybe while you were cutting back your hostas, you thought, man, that's a big clump of hostas. I really want to divide those and kind of move them around the garden. Or maybe there's a bare spot in your garden that you had kind of been overlooking all season, but as you're really digging deep in the garden, it's like, you know what? I could really use this here or that there. I want to move this. So now's the time, is the perfect time to be doing these things, dividing perennials and moving them around in your garden. So maybe dividing them and creating like groupings of the same perennial elsewhere in the garden, dividing them and give them to your neighbor or family or friends.
the reason is, and here's the thing, you can move a plant and divide a plant and replant it any time of the year that you want. The reason why fall is best is because this time of year, the plant is going dormant or dormant. It doesn't need much as resources as far as specifically water. So think about if you took a plant in your garden and chopped it in half and moved half of it to another part of your garden in the middle of July, you'd immediately see it wilt. You'd have to water it every single day, and it would just never look the same until next season. It would never look good. Whereas if you do it now, nothing's going to change because it's not taking up hardly any water. So this is the time to do it, and that's why.
Plus, even like planting, like right now is a great time to plant perennials. So the dividing and stuff, they've gone dormant or they're going dormant, but the soil temperatures are still warm, and I don't think people realize that. You get the one night where it dips down this time of the year into like the upper 20s, and it's like, man, like it's freezing cold out, but the soil itself, you get an inch or two down into the soil, and the soil temperatures are still in the 60s.
Right.
And that's still like prime root growing, so you're not going to get the top end of the plant doing much work, but the roots are still going to be doing something down there in the soil.
They should still root in nicely if you give them a little bit of water when you first divide them.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of water, so if you've had a dry fall like we have here, maybe now's a good time to get out with the watering hose and the sprinkler and just giving everything a really, really good deep drink, going into the wintertime, like
Right.
really saturating that soil.
Because
down,
the
so.
soil is going to soil may freeze. Here it's kind of a wild card with what our soil is going to do, but it may freeze, and having soil that has some even moisture in it is going to be really helpful during those times when the soil is frozen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And going back to this dividing of perennials, a lot of people want to just treat their plants with so much care and love, and you can do that, but you can also just pop one of these perennials out of the ground and take a spade or a shovel and just chop it up into pieces.
Yeah.
It's fine. And that's how you divide. I mean, you literally pop the whole plant out of the ground and you look at it and think how many pieces you want to make with it. And as long as you get a good chunk of roots in each piece, then you can bury those around in that space so it's more evenly filled out. Or like Matt said, if you wanted that plant in another part of your garden, you now have more of that plant,
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and buy another one of those. You've got plenty just right there in your garden.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's a money saver too. You do have to be careful with a couple of perennials when you are dividing though, and that's peonies and the tuberous irises, the rhizomatic ones. You don't want to bury those too deep. And I'm not sure what the reason is. I'm not sure if it's disease or if it's just the plant wants to be closer to the surface. But when you divide up a peony, what you'll see are these little eyes. They're essentially buds for new growth. You want those eyes right up at the top of the soil, kind of sticking out. Same with the tubers of the iris. You don't want to bury those too deep. You want to kind of create a little trench in the soil and set them in and then pack the soil around them. But those tubers have to be a little bit visible.
Okay.
In order for those plants to perform really well the next season.
I didn't realize that with the irises.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that with the peonies. Now, with those being, wanting to leave them a little bit shallower in the soil, what about like mulching over them? Could you plant them in the soil shallow but still mulch over them? Okay,
I think you can put a light layer of mulch over them. That's fine.
Yeah.
What I'm getting is at is you don't want to dig down 6 inches, bury that thing, and then stomp dirt over it.
But this time of the year, while you're out doing all of this stuff, so maybe you're dividing or planting peonies and these tuberous type irises, and you decide you want other flowers, fall flowers in there, fall bulb or rooting type flower. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. So like your tulips, daffodils, hyacinths, alliums, things like that. That would be perfect while you're out cleaning up the garden. Go to your local greenhouse, go to Dutch Mill Greenhouse, shout out to Dutch Mill, and pick up some of these bulbs. And while you're out doing your perennial cleanup, your garden cleanup, and after it's all said and done, then just start popping these things in, and
yeah,
those though, like your tulips and your daffodils and things, those can get planted deeper, more in that like 4 to 6 inch deep range.
Yeah, this is the time to be doing like the tulips and the daffs and the alliums. There are some spring bulbs, but this is the time for those. And you can dig a hole and put several bulbs into one hole. So rather than having like one little bloom, you can have like a whole cluster of blooms. In fact, I recommend that.
Yeah, and also when you're planting like daffodils and tulips, clearly like you're only going to plant what you can afford. But don't expect like 3 tulips or 5 tulips planted together to be like super impactful. Like if you want to make an impact with your bulbs, go out and spend a little bit of money and buy a bunch of tulips so you can do like a really good mass planting of them. Same with the daffodils, really kind of pack them in there.
And maybe you don't know the answer to this, maybe you do, or maybe Bob can weigh in. But when's the latest you can get bulbs in? Because I know as far as like planting trees, we can plant trees all the way till the ground's frozen. That's fine. Can you plant bulbs later in the season? Like, can you put in daffodil bulbs in December?
Yeah,
you can.
You can.
So if money is an issue, then kind of watch them at your garden center because they will put those on sale.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Those are going out. Christmas stuff's holiday stuff's coming in. They're going to mark that stuff down. So just wait.
All of the bulbs at Dutch Mill right now are half off.
There you go.
So,
and it might be slimmer pickings the later you wait. But keep an eye on that stuff.
yeah, for sure.
Keep your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, December, I've seen on like Instagram people even like last ditch kind of Hail Mary. They've put them in like even as late as late January when the ground isn't frozen. It's been a milder winter and they've put them in and had success. Maybe not as good of success, but success nonetheless. So the thing with these bulbs is I think they need a chill time.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to be in the ground for so long to chill before they can flower. Now, some of these places like Leo Burby, I know that they offer like pre-chilled bulbs, so they will actually chill them in their coolers prior to shipping them out to you, so that and that would be more for people that are forcing daffodils in a greenhouse like in the winter. So these things are a full-on plant and flower like early on in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be, those are going to be more your like pre-chilled bulbs.
Okay.
So that would be more on the wholesale side, I think, in like the big cut flower farmers and people like that. But that's definitely a thing. It's definitely out there.
Thank you for that bulb knowledge you're dropping on me.
Oh yeah, for sure. So
I'm not the best with bulbs. Every year I'm like, I need to plant a bunch of bulbs in that bed, and then I never do. So
I planted a bunch this year.
I know you did.
So
you're better at me than me at that, and that's okay.
Well, is what it is.
Yeah.
So so yeah, do you have anything else you want to add to that was kind of a quick run through on things to think about and things to try while you're out doing this stuff.
I did have one more thing I wanted to mention, just since we're coming off and still in a drought, right? You licking your mic again?
Mm-hmm.
You love that thing?
Mm-hmm.
What flavor is it?
Grape.
Okay, because mine is the flavor of Wario's burps.
Ooh. Little Philly cheesesteak burp.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Cheesesteak Mike. So
I'll lick it later.
Okay. So plants that really can struggle in the winter after a drought, lubing, are evergreens specifically, and they are prone to what we call winter desiccation, which is just a real fancy word for they can dry out really easily in the winter and die. And the reason is you've already got dry soil, and then the plant loses water, just because plants do. They take up water, then they let water go through their leaves, but they start losing more water than they can take up. So the soil's dry, it's freezing, it's not taking up water, and then it's getting hit by winds, winter winds, sucking the moisture out of them even further, right?
Sucking.
Yeah, the moisture's gone. So that's winter desiccation, and what it will do is it'll cause those evergreens to brown out and eventually die. And because they don't lose their leaves, like the deciduous stuff isn't working so hard through the winter because, they're just staying alive. These evergreens want to still take up water. So watering your evergreens really well before the winter sets in, especially this year with the drought, I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of dead evergreens this next season. Maybe ones that are like less established, or ones that are out in like a super windy area. That's when they're going to get got. So a lot of people, you'll see they'll put up like burlap and other type of windbreaks on their evergreens. That's one way to battle winter desiccation. But I think the best way to do it is to give your evergreens a good drink.
Oh yeah, for
this
sure.
time of year.
Yep.
And so if that means like watering your evergreens, a handful more times this fall, so the soil around them is nice and evenly moist, then I think that would be a good practice.
That's what I should probably do at work.
So if you have like a line of arborvitae in your yard that you use as like a screen, it's probably going to get some winds. Running a sprinkler on them, or if you've got some more specialty evergreens, dotted through your garden, just hand watering those a few times.
Yeah. Do you hear my dog?
Yeah, is he dreaming?
Yeah, is he's whimpering, right?
Yeah.
And he's kind of like running.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
his tail's
that's
between
Prince.
his legs,
Yeah,
but he's sleeping.
He's sleeping.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, he's probably just dreaming of like playing with Nissa or chasing a ball
Nissa's
or
just
something.
looking at him like, I'm right here
Yeah.
if you want to play.
So winter desiccation in the Evergreens.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I like is a good winter defecation. What about you?
Yeah, I do. I like, are you talking like in the elements or?
No,
just
like
in your cozy.
when you're outside in the elements and you come into a nice, warm, cozy toilet room.
Yeah.
And just winter defecate.
I'm into that too. Yeah, I kind of like a good defecation in all the seasons.
So we got desiccation and defecation.
Yeah, don't get those two confused.
Please don't.
No.
So cool, Tim. You know, Tim and I were just discussing it. We've only got a few more episodes left before we're going to take a break for the winter. So I think we're going to run this gig through, what did we decide on? The week of Thanksgiving?
Yeah,
So the last one will be like the 26th of November?
I think so. That could still be a little fluid. We might go a little later, but I would say for the time being, let's expect that last episode to be that week of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so you got this episode here and then 3 more after that. I hope you guys have enjoyed this so far. I know we've had a lot of fun doing it. We're going to give ourselves this break to try and brainstorm on some good ideas for season 2, you know, and also spend time with family because we've got the holidays coming up and life gets pretty chaotic then.
And I mean, you know, at the end of the day, this is a podcast about gardening first and foremost. And, you know, we're not doing a whole lot of, gardening in the winter.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could definitely make great episodes, but, you know, we don't want to take all the good ideas for next season. So
yeah. Maybe we'll drop like a little episode here or there,
like
just a little like bonus thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something funny, and maybe it'll be something very non-garden related.
Yeah.
And it'll just be like some fun episodes.
Yeah, tell us. Would you like that?
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. So let us know on that. I think we should do like a TikTok channel or something. I don't know, just something where we could like get some funny videos out there.
Yeah, just like when we're out working, just some off-the-cuff shit like we do.
Yeah, like those little like 30-second or 1 minute like funny videos where it's like, now you see them, now you don't. Like those kind of, you know.
I'd be in for that. I need to get a TikTok account though.
Well, we could make a Shrubby Buddies TikTok account.
True, but like I'd want to like, could I watch them with that? I don't know how this works.
Yeah, like TikTok in general.
I'm stupid. I'm 40. I don't know any of that shit.
I'm 41.
Yeah, okay.
So, so maybe the Shrubby Buddies will make a TikTok account, and that'll be fun.
We'll see.
So,
We'll see.
Cool. Yeah. All right, people. Well, hope you enjoyed this episode this week. Until next time, I am Matthew Seagarthy the First.
And I'm Timothy D. Fleischer the First.
And
we out.
We out.
And we love you, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Love you harder.
Bye-bye.
+2. Bye-bye.